Welcome to part 17 of this series, trying to locate the sons of Noah and where they really went to. In this video we're looking at Madai, son of Japheth, son of Noah. Now Josephus tells us that the Greeks called the descendants of Madai the Medes. This is a similar story to what happened with the Thracians. Just remember how the Greeks called the descendants of Tyrus Thracians, after a character in Greek mythology, and we have a similar story here because we have this character called Medea in Greek mythology, and Herodotus tells us that she ended up leaving Athens and settled in the Iranian plateau among the Aryans, who subsequently changed their name to the Medes. So the Medes would have called themselves the Aryans, but then because of this story with Medea they changed their name to the Medes. So we have the connection with the Medes to being Aryans. Now, I don't want to speak too much about this because if you can see my screen and you can read the words, it's not too small. You can see these controversial topics in this dark part of history. And I don't really want to go too deeply in this video, but we just want to try to get an idea about this word Arya. So it's to do with the language Vedic Sanskrit. Also got a connection with noble. Maybe refer to themselves as the noble ones. You can see a connection with being free, not being a slave. If we look at all these options, the different languages: devoted, faithful, chief, noble. I think an important one here is that it says, to be an Aryan is to be faithful to the Vedic religion. So you practice the religion and the rituals, but also connected to the language, Vedic Sanskrit. Just to give an idea, when we say Arya or Iran or the Aryans, what we're talking about is this concept of being free, noble, devoted, but it's also connected to religion and language. Let's look to see a timeline for the Medes, because I saw something a little bit strange here, that we've got this mention of Mada, which could be connected to the Medes, 2143 BCE, but then there's this gap of like 1,300 years until they come on the record again as the Amadi, with the Assyrian king receiving tribute. That can be connected to the Madai with the Medes. So you've got this huge gap in the record, and there's not much on this timeline here for the Medes. Now this important story here we kind of spoke about when we spoke about Lud, son of Shem, and the Oracle of Delphi. We touched on that a little bit. So just like a very, very simplified idea of what happens is that the Medes is actually the superior part of the empire, and the Persians are actually underneath the Medes to begin with. And when Cyrus the Great rises, he actually defeats the Medes, and the Persians kind of take over as the most powerful tribe, or the most powerful part of the empire. But the Medes are subject to them, but they still work together. That's why it's sometimes referred to as the Medo-Persian Empire. So the Medes are still a part of the empire. There might be like some relations that family relations that we can try to speak about and learn about. But just to say that the Medes actually rose first as the power, and the Persians were subject to the Medes. But then when in Cyrus the Great, in his time, he defeated the Medes, establishes the Achaemenid Empire, and then the Persians are above the Medes, and the Medes are subject to the Persians. And in this picture at the start, we can see here this is a Mede. They say this is a Mede and this is a Persian. So that kind of shows, just like symbolically, that the Mede is behind the Persian. Eventually the Persians are in front, and the Medes are behind. But we can see this timeline. We're going to try and investigate why we potentially have this 1,300 year gap in the history, and we're going to try to build a bit of a foundation on the Medes in terms of genealogy. And we're going to go to first look at the book of Jubilees, because it gives us this fascinating detail. Let me read this to you. It says, "And Japheth and his sons went towards the sea and dwelt in the land of their portion. And Madai saw the land of the sea, and it did not please him. And he begged a portion from Elam, and Ashur, and Arphaxad, his wife's brother. This is a very important detail, because it's saying that Madai, the son of Japheth, married into the line of Shem, married a daughter of Shem. And now he's asking for land from Arphaxad, Ashur, and Elam, because he doesn't like the land by the sea, or the land that he was allotted to him. So it's a very, very fascinating detail that the book of Jubilees gives us. That if we're trying to locate Madai and where his descendants went, we should be looking in the land of Shem. Very interesting. And it says that he dwelt in the land of Media, near to his wife's brother until this day. So maybe there was kind of like multiple reasons. So he obviously wasn't maybe happy with the land, but his wife is from the line of Shem, and maybe she wanted to live with her family, and Madai preferred to live in the land of Shem. So what we should be thinking about now is with Shem, that there's a connection with the Medes, with some of these lines, with some of these sons. And that's what we're going to see now. Let's carry on investigating, because further on in Jubilees, we're told that Arphaxad took himself a wife, and her name was Rasu-Asia, the daughter of Susan. So there's that Susan, and the Susa and the Susiana we've been speaking about, the daughter of Elam. So Arphaxad marries into Elam, or there's intermarriage between these two, Arphaxad and Elam. Okay, and the son that they have, that Jubilees tells us, is Canaan. Okay, so Arphaxad and Rasu-Asia have Canaan. But if you see here in Genesis, it doesn't actually give us that son, Canaan. It goes straight from Arphaxad to Selah. So that's a bit of a discrepancy, it looks like. But if we go to the Gospel of Luke, he actually gives Canaan as the son of Arphaxad. So what source was Luke using? Because he's actually saying that Arphaxad had a son called Canaan, and then it would be Canaan that would have Selah. So Jubilees and the Gospel of Luke is saying that there should be a descendant here named Canaan. And we're going to try to see if we can find evidence to kind of support that it should be there, because if we look at Jubilees, it goes on to give us something very interesting. It says that this Canaan, he took himself a wife whose name was Melka, the daughter of Madai. See, now we've got a descendant of Arphaxad intermarrying with Madai, the Medes. This is very, very interesting, because now what we're going to do is we're going to look at this Melka to see if we can find evidence for this connection with the Medes and Arphaxad further down. And we do find it because, okay, now we're in Genesis 11, and we're talking about, it says Abram, remember that's Abraham. His name was changed, so we're talking about Abraham. It says, and Abraham and Nahor took them wives. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. Okay, so we got a Milcah here in the time of Abraham and Nahor. Okay, so this is the Nahor we're speaking of. So he takes a wife called Milcah, but we know back here there was this Milcah, daughter of Madai. So I think Melka and Milcah are the same name. I think it's connected. But we can see that what's maybe happened is that this name, Melka, has stayed within this family as like an important name, even to this point here when Nahor marries Milcah. And I think this name is connected to like being like a queen. So maybe it's like a royal line or an important noble line. But I think that kind of supports the idea that this is what the Jubilees is saying about this Canaan. It might be showing that that's true, that he married a daughter of Madai called Melka, because we're still seeing this name. We're still seeing this name later on in the genealogy. So what we're starting to see, we must now start thinking about, is Medes in the lines of Arphaxad, okay, being connected in this line, but also maybe connected with Ashur or Elam. And because I want to show you this Bible verse from Isaiah, I think it's here. This is Isaiah 21:2. It says, a dire vision has been shown to me. The traitor betrays, the looter takes loot, Elam attack, Media lay siege. I will bring to an end all the groaning she caused. Just to show you this verse, and I think this is prophesizing the destruction of Babylon, but this connection between Media and Elam, to show that the Medes are connected to Elam. So that's what I'm trying to say, is that we must think about Medes being maybe intermarrying with Elam, but there's also maybe Medes intermarrying with in this line of Arphaxad. So let's stay with this line of Arphaxad and see what else we can discover, because Abraham, when his first wife dies, Sarai, or Sarah, he marries another wife called Keturah, and they have 6 sons: Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Now it's these 2 sons here, called Medan and Midian. So it looks like they are carrying that name Madai. So this could be more evidence of this intermarrying, and the way the names are carried forward. And Medan and Midian could be connected to the Medes, to the Madai, son of Japheth, because I think Madai and the Medes and the Median Empire, this word is connected to like middle or medium, so it might be mean like the middle land. If you think about some of our words, like the Median, and being connected with middle. So I think that's what we're seeing here, is that these 2 sons of Abraham, maybe, here they are here, you can see them from Abraham, might be being named after Madai, because of this female. We got Milcah as well in this line. Maybe some of these sons are also being named after Madai. So what I want to do now is think about where we could find on this map evidence to support this idea of Madai living among Shem. Because remember, we want to try to find where did Madai go, and now we're seeing that we should be looking in the land of Shem, and we've been speaking a lot about the land of Shem. So can we find something on this map? And there is something here very interesting. We can see, look here, Median. So it looks like it's M-E-D-I-A-N, Median. Now, is this speaking of the Median Empire with the Medes? Or is this speaking of Midian? So the land of Midian, or Medan. Okay, so you've got 2 options, Medan or Midian. And this would be very important, because the land of Midian is a very important biblical location. The land of Midian. There's many stories in the Bible that speaks of it. So potentially this could be an option for the land of Midian. And this is we're going to cover quite a lot in this video. So it might be the kind of video where you might have to watch it a few times to get all the details, but we're going to go quite quickly, because this might actually help us understand the history of why there could be this gap in this timeline. Because if this is the land of Midian, and we're thinking about the Medes being connected with Midian, we do have this kingdom known as Mitanni. Now we mentioned this kingdom, and we said we want to, we're going to look at it. Eventually, we're going to look at it, and we spoke about the Hittites Empire and the Amorites, and this would be the Assyrians here. So this is, I think, maybe showing them Mitanni at its greatest extent, maybe even showing that it encompassed Syria. But let's look to see what we can find out about this. Now we're not going to study this whole the whole history for this kingdom. Just want to show you a couple of things. That you see how it's referred to here as a foreign country called Matini, but it shows the letters MTN. So this is what this is like the root of the word without the vowels. And then with these languages, the vowels were interchangeable. So what we're looking at here potentially is Medan or Midian, because the T is interchangeable with the D. So that's why scholars have made this link between the Mitanni and the Midianites and the Medan of Abraham. So the Medan or the Midianites. So that's the connection, is because of this the spelling. This could be the T could be interchangeable with a D, so it could be Midian or Medan. So this kingdom could be actually the kingdom of the Midianites or the Medanites. And just to kind of show that it could be fair to say that, it's because you also have this connection with Neyarin. This land of Mitanni is also known as Neyarin. So you must look at that Nehar, and we've kind of seen that already. Look, Nehor, and another Nehor. So can you see how the land of Neyarin can also be called the land of Midian, because it's in the same family. So you could say it's the land of Midian, but maybe you could also say the land of Neyarin. So now when you hear that word, Neyarin, you must try and also maybe think that it could be connected to Nahor. So lots of little details we're bringing up. But there's something interesting with this kingdom, to try kind of start tying it back to some of the things that we've been speaking about, is that there's a treaty between the Hittites and the Mitanni. Now remember, this could be the Midianites, but it's also connected to the Medes. Try and think about all that we spoke about with Madai marrying into Shem and into Arphaxad. So it's also connecting it to the Medes. But what's interesting is this treaty between the Hittites and the Mitanni. They invoke these gods, Mitra and Varuna and Indra, and these are Vedic gods. Okay, so that's showing that the Mitanni, they're an Ari. They might refer to themselves as the Ari. Remember what we've been speaking about, where we said that they called themselves the Aryans. The Medes called themselves the Aryans. Okay, we kind of had the idea of noble, free men, but that was connected to the language of Sanskrit and also the Vedic religion. To be an Aryan, you have to follow the Vedic religion. So now I'm just trying to show you how we can tie that, give an example of that these would be the gods that they would be invoking in this treaty, showing that both these two nations are Aryan nations. Isn't that fascinating? Because now we're learning more about the Hittites as well, that the Hittites are an Aryan nation because they're invoking these gods. And we've been speaking about all these different connections with the Hittites, with also northern India and these languages. Remember we had that video, what connects English to Sanskrit and what connects Sanskrit to Lithuanian. So all these things we're trying to learn more about. But it just shows that this Mitanni, which we're connecting to Midian and the Medes, this is evidence to show that they are worshipping and invoking Vedic gods, which shows that the connection to the Aryans, that the Medes are connected to the Aryans, but the Medes are, we're showing that there's a connection between the Medes to the Mitanni, just to show how we can tie it together, that the Mitanni is also an Aryan nation, just like the Medes, to show that they're connected. So, covered quite a lot in this video. What I would like to do is just look a little bit at the history to see what happens, to kind of remember how we spoke about this 1,300 year gap. If we can try and make sense of that a little bit, because we can see that the Medes only come back onto the record with the Assyrians, that the Assyrians are receiving tribute from the Medes. So let's see if we can make sense of that, because if we now consider the Mitanni being connected with the Medes, we have a bit more older history. You see that? A bit more history to consider and investigate. And we can see that Mitanni is very powerful because it actually annexes Assyria. Okay, so now try and remember, we're thinking Midianites, we're thinking a connection to Abraham, but also we're thinking a connection with the Medes. But then what happens is that it's actually the Hittites that sack Mitanni. So maybe this peace treaty, or this treaty, didn't really last too long, because then we can see it's actually the Hittites that conquer Mitanni. But then what happens if we look at the history of Assyria, see how Assyria comes into play, and we're going to go backwards and forwards a little bit here to see what happens. But it's actually the Assyrians that then defeat the Hittites. Okay, so the Hittites conquered Mitanni, but then very soon the Assyrians conquered the Hittites, so then actually the Assyrians took over, let's say, the land of Midian maybe. So could that maybe explain, could that not explain maybe this detail where it says that the Assyrians were receiving tribute from the Medes, the Amadai, the Amadi, because now we can see the history that Assyria conquered Mitanni. See if we can see that again. See, look here, Assyria conquers the kingdom of Mitanni and its allies. So we can see how the land of Midian maybe comes under Assyrian rule, but with its allies, maybe the Medes are also coming under Assyrian rule, and then that would explain why we see on the record when we do hear about the Medes again, it's to do with Assyria, and they're paying tribute to Assyria. But what I would like to do is actually do another video on the Medes, and to try to see what happens to the Medes. Where did they go? What happened to them? Because it doesn't really tell us, what happened to these Medes, and where did they go? What happened to them? I think we'll do that in the next video, and have another part to the Medes, because they're very fascinating. And the last part of this video, I just want to speak about tying it to something else that we've been speaking of in terms of the picture that we're building, to try and see, does it fit? Because remember how we've been speaking about if it's true, then it needs to fit, it needs to ring true. So one of the things was that we're speaking about Medes, Madai, Midian, having this idea of being in the middle. So I was just wondering, with this land here, it's quite central in Africa, whether that would fit, that this could be described as like a land in the middle. I wonder if that could support that detail, that it's it's kind of central Africa. So that's one thing to think about. But the other thing, which is, like I said earlier on, is that the land of Midian is quite famous in the Bible. There's many stories about Midian in the Bible. Let's look at a few of them. So the one thing I want to pick up on is that there's a connection between Midian and Moab. Okay, and I want to show you another example of this connection between Midian and Moab. Okay, so when the Israelites are coming out of Egypt in the Exodus with Moses, and the Moabites obviously hear that they're coming, and the Moabites are worried. And the Moabs, they have a meeting with the elders of Midian. What are we going to do about these Israelites that are coming to our territory? So you can see this connection between Moab and Midian, that there may be like a close proximity. And we've been speaking in the series, in part 11 we spoke about the Moabites, investigating whether they could be, whether they were living in the Cameroon region. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so here's the Gabon, here's Cameroon. So were the Moabites living here, in this region? Can you see how potentially that would fit? So if the Moabites were living in this region, and we're just saying that there may have been a close proximity between the Moabites and the land of Midian, if this could be the land of Midian, how they are, well, they would be in close proximity if this is the land of Moab and this is the land of Midian, how that would actually work and fit. So that's very interesting. And I just want to show you another important part of the story, because Midian comes up quite a lot. It's to do with Moses. Let's see if I can find that. I might have gone past it. Let me go back a little bit. Yeah. So it says, now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian. So Moses kills an Egyptian, and then he has to flee. And where does he flee to? He flees to the land of Midian. Okay. So can you see how that's actually not like a very strange thing? Because if we look at the genealogy, we can see Midian comes from Abraham. Moses also comes from Abraham. So he's going to a family member, or to, it's like a tribe within a family, let's say it that way. And then what happens is he actually meets the daughters of Jethro, who's a priest of Midian, and he marries one of the daughters. So he's living in the land of Midian, And you have the famous story of the burning bush, and then God tells Moses that he must go to Egypt to to free the captives, to free the Israelites from the captivity in Egypt. But then when he's coming out in the Exodus, they go back towards the land of Midian. So the land of Midian must be in the Holy Land, or in close proximity to the Holy Land, because when they're returning, when they're actually leaving Egypt and going towards the Promised Land, they're going back towards the land of Midian because Jethro comes to meet him. Just to show you how it's going to be very important to know where the land of Midian is, because when you start thinking about, where did the Israelites go from the Exodus, where did Moses go when he fled from Egypt to the land of Midian, how potentially it's very important to know some of these details. If this could be the land of Midian, and potentially you've got Moab, how you can start to put the picture together and start to see, and track the journey, and the picture can start become stronger. Because remember, we also spoke about in I think it was part 5, was Esau in the land of Zaire, the Congo. That was another important detail, because if you've got Edom in this region, and you've got Moab, and you've got the land of Midian, we know that the Israelites asked to pass through the territory of Edom. They were asking, can we have passage through your land? And the Edomites refused. They wouldn't allow them to pass. So you can see how you would need to know these details. Where's the land of Edom? Where's the land of Moab? Where's the land of Midian? But I think we are starting to build that picture, and yeah, it's getting very, very interesting. And I hope you enjoyed this video. This is just a little bit of a foundation on the genealogy and a little bit of an introduction into some of these concepts. And like I said, in the next part I would like to do the Medes again, and just try and see, can we find out what happened to them, where did they go? And there's more interesting things that we can find about these Medes. The next video is also going to be very interesting. So thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you in the next one.